Gamers are upset that Donkey Kong Bonanza was nominated for Game of the Year. It didn't even win. It was not the game that won Game of the Year. And yet you're already seeing people seethe about the game simply being nominated. How dare a Nintendo game be put up alongside masterpieces like Silk Song, Expedition 33, and Death Stranding 2. Don't they know that Donkey Kong is a brand for children? Aren't they aware that the children's games are less sophisticated than games for adults? I got my PhD in gaming, and I didn't get it to see Donkey Kong be worshipped by critics. It is downright laughable how common this take is. I've seen a number of major YouTubers, people like Shroud, like make release these kind of statements indicating that Donkey Kong Bonanza does not deserve Game of the Year, that it's not that good, that it's a kids game, that Nintendo sucks, that the Switch 2 is a disappointment, that there are so many better games out there. And it is downright embarrassing how hard people are trying to disrespect this game in particular, while giving slop like Death Stranding 2 and Hades 2 a complete pass. Like, it is remarkable just how upset people are that this game got nominated. Yes, the coping and seething about Bonanza's obvious success, it has already begun. It doesn't matter whether Donkey Kong Bonanza wins or loses Game of the Year because it's going to be bigger than Expedition 33 anyway, like it's going to be bigger than Silk Song. That none of these games that are being put up against this title are going to have anywhere near the long-term relevancy that this does. Donkey Kong Country was one of the most beloved games ever produced back in the 90s. And now we have this full on reboot that completely killed it, brought the character back into the limelight, and will continue to be an iconic Switch game for years. I would not be surprised if this thing does like Super Mario Odyssey numbers long term, selling upwards of like 30 million units. you know, like it is remarkable just how much more of a success this game is than Expedition 33, Silk Song, Death Stranding 2, Hades 2. Like, it is by far the most successful game that's been nominated for any of these award shows this year. And it is right now in the process of being downplayed and ignored. You know, I'm sure that like Synthetic Man or Dark Side Phil or any one of these grifters are like sitting there on their little streams, like complaining about this game being as popular and successful as it is. But the reality of it is that this game is popular because it's so good, because it just stomped the competition. It was an innovator. It was so far beyond what any third party developer did this year that it really does need to be talked about and celebrated. Something like Expedition 33 is never ever ever going to compete with that. That is the absolute reality of the situation. But we're in this weird, awkward cycle where people just kind of want to downplay Donkey Kong Bonanza. They want to just ignore it. They want to just pretend that Donkey Kong is some irrelevant IP that no one cares about, that the Switch 2 is failing. And that is something that is just not going to stick. It didn't even like survive through the launch window period, but you see a lot of these guys, PC gamers usually, who just kind of sit there and say that like people don't talk about Donkey Kong anymore, that it's not very relevant or popular, and that, oh, people are talking about Arc Raiders and they're talking about Ghost of Your Toy, and that is just a complete and total cope. Okay. It doesn't matter how many awards that these games are given. It doesn't matter how many units they sell. It doesn't matter. Like how much people talk about them. Like, Donkey Kong is bigger than all of these games without even trying, simply by virtue of being Donkey Kong. Simply by virtue of being part of the Mario brand. You know, it is remarkable to see people seriously believe that their nobody video game franchise mascot, someone like Knack, is on par with Donkey Kong. It is embarrassing how last year Jeff Keighley like granted Astrobot Game of the Year out of a desperate attempt to push it as like PlayStation's flagship mascot character, and then not even a full year later, see that release just get completely stomped by Donkey Kong Bonanza to the point where like I don't even really understand why they even bothered to try. It was embarrassing what they tried to pull in that situation, and it's something that really does need to be pointed out and laughed at, like at just how insane the double standards actually are. Donkey Kong Bonanza is far more original, innovative, and fun than anything else on the Game Awards nominees. And yet, the general gaming community wants to write this game off as if it doesn't matter, that it's irrelevant, that it's not competitive, that it doesn't deserve to win. I guess we can go through the comment section real quick here, just to prove my point. So much cope in the replies. Stop mixing the quality of the games with how much chronic online folks spend online hyping it up. This over Hades 2, Silk Song, and Kingdom Come Deliverance 2. One year when Baldur's Gate 3 won this, it was taken seriously. Now it isn't. Donkey Kong Bonanza slapped. Also innovated, unlike Expedition 33. Yeah, the combat system in Expedition 33 was directly ripped from Mario and Luigi. Not a lot of people point that out, but the critics scored it worse than Hades 2, Clair Obscur, Blueprints, and Split Fiction. Make it make sense. DK was the highest rated AAA studio published game of the year, both with critics and audiences. The only thing that has done better than it has been the three top indie games. And that is a stretch because those games were a lot cheaper than Bonanza. So Bonanza pulled in more money because it was sold at a higher price because, they sell out at a premium. Like the whole idea that like Silk Song can beat Bonanza because it was sold at $20 is just not true at all. People don't realize this because if you sell at a higher price, you make more money. Let's see. Well deserved. Funny how people disagree with this, but we're fine with Astrobot. Yeah, that is a good point. Was Donkey Kong there to collect the award? Yep. Yep. So much seething, so much complaining. People are so upset at Donkey Kong Bonanza winning this award. Like, I'm sure this isn't going to be the only award it wins. I'm sure most of the Game of the Year awards will be handed to Expedition 33. Claire in obscurity, but Bonanza is going to be the game that people actually remember. Okay. Like the Game of the Year award means absolutely nothing in an industry when Nintendo games are remembered far after the initial year in which they released. Gamers are upset